It's strange how silence in a forest can scream louder than a city ever could. That's the first thing I noticed when I arrived at the outpost. The trees didn't rustle. No birds called. Even the wind seemed to die at the edge of the clearing, as if it, too, was afraid to go any further. My grandfather used to say, "The woods remember. They watch. And at night, they hunger." I always thought it was one of his old mountain man sayings, half joke and half whiskey-induced folklore. But I've come to understand that everything he said, every word, was a warning. When I inherited the forest outpost, I was lost in my life. My job had just been outsourced, my lease was expiring, and my last relationship had dissolved in a shouting match and a broken picture frame. The letter came just in time. It was handwritten, yellowed at the edges, and sealed in wax. I remember the trembling in my fingers as I broke the seal. To Elijah Redfern, it read, "You are now the keeper of the watch. The forest awaits your return." It was signed by my Uncle Rafe, who, as far as I knew, had disappeared 15 years ago without a trace. My father used to say Rafe lost his mind living in the woods, became a hermit and wandered off one night, never to return. The land itself was buried deep in the northern Appalachians, far from towns, far from cell towers, even farther from the idea of civilization. A single logging road twisted through 40 miles of pine before reaching the base of the mountains, and from there, a narrow trail led to the outpost. I had to hike in with a heavy pack and a printed map, no GPS, no phone signal. Just me, the trees, and the sinking realization that whatever waited up there hadn't seen a human in a long time. The outpost was less a house and more a watchtower with rooms. Built into a granite shelf overlooking a steep ravine, it had narrow slit windows, a stone fireplace, and floorboards that creaked like old bones. Dust coated everything inside. A thick journal rested on a wooden table, its leather cover cracked, the title burned into it, the watcher's log, and carved into the wall above the fireplace, in precise, unsettling lettering, were the words, "It knows when you're awake." I tried to laugh it off that first night, cooking a can of beans over the old iron stove. But the darkness outside the window was not normal darkness. It was heavy, suffocating, as if the forest was leaning in close, trying to listen. The moon hung low and red over the treetops, its light barely reaching the porch. And that's when I heard it. A shuffle. A slow, deliberate crunch of leaves beyond the porch rail. I stood still, spoon halfway to my mouth. There it was again, 3 steps. Then silence. I went to the door, opened it slowly, the wood groaning. The forest was empty. Dead still. No wind. No frogs. No night birds. Just me, the trees, and something out there pretending it had walked away. That first night I barely slept. I stayed up with a fire in the hearth, every shadow stretching too long, every sound from outside making my pulse throb. Something scraped against the window once. Not a branch. It was knuckles, dragging. In the morning, the woods looked completely normal, peaceful, even. I told myself I had overreacted. City stress, isolation, and darkness can play tricks on your mind. I spent the day cleaning up, organizing supplies, and checking the map that had come with the letter. It outlined strange points in the forest labeled with odd names like the Hollow Tree, the Knuckle Nest, and the Bleeding Stones. I figured they were local landmarks or old ranger notations. But the map also had lines drawn between the points, forming a web that seemed intentional. That afternoon, I found a set of wind chimes hanging just beyond the tree-line. They were made from bones. Animal bones, maybe, some small, some disturbingly long. They clacked together in a pattern, even with no wind, like they were speaking in a tongue too old to understand. I took them down, buried them, and tried to shake off the growing sense that I wasn't alone. That night, things escalated. I was reading the watcher's log by lantern light when the front door rattled. Just once. Like a knock. Then silence. My breath caught in my throat. I grabbed the lantern and stepped to the door, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I opened it slowly. No one was there. But carved into the wood, 3 fresh lines, deep and dripping sap as if the tree itself bled through the grain. I looked closer. It wasn't sap. It was dark, sticky, and smelled metallic. I slammed the door, locked it, and checked the windows. Every one of them now had fogged-over handprints on the outside. 5 fingers, too long, too thin. And they weren't fading. I stayed up all night again, but I wasn't alone. Every hour, I heard whispering from the trees. A voice that sounded like my Uncle Rafe, calling my name. Softly. Repeatedly. Elijah. Elijah. Sometimes pleading. Sometimes angry. When the sun finally rose, I stepped outside and found a single object resting on the porch, a glass jar. Inside was a human molar. My stomach twisted. On the bottom of the jar, etched into the glass, were the words, "You're next." I should have run. I know that now. But something kept me there. A pull, like a hook buried deep in my mind. The Watcher's log mentioned it, too, how the forest wants you to leave, but something else wants you to stay. And every night, the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to turn away. That day, I decided to explore the area marked the Hollow Tree. According to the journal, it was a place of exchange, where things disappear and reappear in impossible ways. The trail was overgrown, the trees denser than they had any right to be, their trunks twisting unnaturally. The closer I got, the colder the air became, like the forest exhaled ice. I found the tree in a small clearing. Massive. Split in the middle like something had torn it open from the inside. Inside the hollow, I found dozens of items. Old boots, broken radios, torn backpacks, photographs half buried in moss. One of them was of a boy I recognized. It was a faded school photo of my cousin, who had gone missing when I was 10. He'd vanished near the family cabin during a camping trip. Everyone assumed he had drowned or gotten lost. But here he was, his smiling face, stuck in time, resting inside a haunted tree in the middle of nowhere. Something moved behind me. I spun, heart lurching. Nothing. But then I saw it. On a tree 20 feet away. A silhouette. A figure. Tall. Thin. Longer than it should have been. It didn't move like a person. It shifted like smoke and bone. It had no face. But I knew it was watching me. I ran. Branches scraped my arms, roots grabbed at my feet, the forest howling without sound. When I reached the outpost again, I collapsed inside, bolted the door, and tried to forget what I'd seen. But that night it came to the window. It didn't knock. It tapped. One finger. Slowly. Deliberately. And it didn't stop until sunrise. I woke the next morning to find the fire dead and the cabin colder than it should have been. The windows, still fogged from the night before, let in only thin gray light. A low mist blanketed the clearing outside. My body felt sore, like I'd been clenched all night in anticipation. My memories of the previous night were fragmented. Whispers in the trees, the knock at the door, the figure at the edge of the woods. I told myself I must have been dreaming, that it was the forest playing tricks on me. But the dent on the door where something had struck it remained, a deep, fresh indentation where no mark had been the day before. I stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand, and scanned the tree-line. Everything was still. No birds. No wind. Just mist swirling like something breathing, slowly, around the base of the trees. It didn't feel right. I spent the rest of the morning double-checking the perimeter. The fencing at the south side of the property, wooden and wire, had been torn open. Not chewed, not collapsed. Torn. Like something large and intelligent had pulled it apart. I wanted to rationalize it, blame a bear or a storm, but the claw marks on the posts were deep and curved, too wide for any normal animal. I called in a report to Ranger HQ on the sat phone, telling them I had possible bear activity and requesting a second unit to do an overnight sweep. The line crackled, then went dead. Just static. It wouldn't connect again. I spent the afternoon gathering all the notes and logbooks left behind by my uncle. They were scattered across the outpost office in a large tin box labeled simply Private. I didn't remember seeing it before, but it was sitting neatly under the old desk. I opened it and was immediately hit with the musty smell of damp paper and tobacco. The first pages were standard outpost logs, weather, animal sightings, poacher reports. But the deeper I went, the stranger it became. One entry from a year ago read, "Heard the clicks again, same pattern. 3 short, 1 long. Repeated 4 times. Eyes at the ridge line. They don't blink. Must remember, don't leave the porch after 1 a.m. Ever." Another, just weeks before my uncle disappeared. It got inside. No signs of forced entry. Woke up to the radio whispering static, but the power was out. Found deer entrails laid in a circle by the shed. This is more than just a predator. This is a watcher. Watcher. The word pulsed in my mind like a heartbeat. I remembered the way I had felt last night, the way the forest seemed to press in and hold its breath. That night, I set up a perimeter alarm using makeshift tripwires and some old cans. Low tech, but it would at least give me a warning if anything moved in too close. I sat inside with the door bolted and my uncle's shotgun resting across my lap. The Outpost radio hissed on the desk behind me, catching snippets of static like a voice trying to push through a wall. Midnight passed in uneasy silence. Then, at 1:07 a.m., the first can rattled. Not loudly. Just one, softly clinking like a curious child testing its surroundings. I froze, breath held, eyes locked on the window. A second clink followed. Then a third. I crept to the edge of the window and looked out. At first, I saw nothing. Just fog and moonlight over the damp clearing. Then, movement. It wasn't an animal. It was too tall. Too still. A shape stood at the tree-line, again, the exact same place I saw it the night before. Its body was thin, elongated, and utterly motionless. What disturbed me wasn't its form, it was the sense that it was aware of me. As if it knew I was watching, and it wanted me to. Then it lifted its arm, long and wrong, and pointed directly at the cabin. The can trap nearest the door flew into the air as something struck it from behind. I didn't move. I couldn't. The radio behind me squealed, suddenly alive with a burst of noise that made me jump. A voice came through, garbled but human. Outpost 9, get out, not human, it's inside. Then static. My skin went cold. I turned toward the door. Nothing there. But the radio squawked again. Behind you. I turned around. Nothing. Just the silent, heavy weight of fear sitting in the room with me. Then I heard something else, the slow, deliberate creak of a floorboard from the bedroom down the hall. One I hadn't stepped on. One that groaned under pressure. Someone was in the cabin. I raised the shotgun, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else, and moved toward the hallway. The bedroom door was closed. I had left it open. I was sure of it. Another creak. The handle turned slowly from the inside. I didn't wait. I fired through the door. The blast echoed like thunder, splintering the wood and knocking the door inward. Smoke and dust filled the hall, and I braced for whatever was inside to lunge, but nothing came. When I pushed the door open fully, the room was empty. No blood. No body. No footprints. Only the faint smell of wet leaves and something foul, like rotting meat and soil. And scrawled on the inside wall, where the bullet had chipped the plaster, was a message written in something dark and smeared. I see through your eyes. I backed away, hands shaking. The rest of the night passed in a tense, sleepless haze. Every creak, every gust of wind, every sound outside the cabin became a threat. Morning was a relief, but only just. The forest was still quiet. Too quiet. I knew then that I had to find out more about this place. About what my family had been hiding for so long. If this outpost wasn't just a wildlife station, then what was it guarding? I returned to the office and searched through every drawer, every box. Finally, I found a key taped underneath the old radio. It was marked with a tiny engraving, 12. I remembered there was a locked trapdoor under the floorboards in the generator shed, marked with the same symbol. By noon, I was there. The generator shed was dark and reeked of oil. The trapdoor groaned when I pried it open, revealing a set of stairs descending into blackness. I turned on my flashlight, loaded the shotgun, and stepped down into whatever secret my family had buried. The air grew colder with each step. Moisture dripped from the stone walls. This wasn't just a crawl space. It was a bunker, long, reinforced, and old. At the bottom, I found a corridor with metal doors lining the sides. Some were rusted shut. One stood ajar. Inside was what looked like a research room, old monitors, binders, strange sigils carved into the concrete, and a recording device still flashing red. I pressed play. A voice crackled to life. It was my uncle. If you're hearing this, then you've seen it. We tried to contain it. We really did. The thing in the forest isn't a spirit or an animal. It's a remnant. A leftover from something older than language. We call it the Watcher. It doesn't hunt. It observes. And the more you notice it, the closer it gets. It feeds on your fear. On your attention. The outpost isn't for protecting the forest from danger. It's for warning the forest about what's inside. And now, if you're still listening, it probably knows your name. The recording cut off. I stood there, frozen, flashlight flickering. Then I heard it, behind me. 3 slow knocks. Not on the bunker door, but on the inside wall. Something was down there with me. And it wasn't watching from the woods anymore. The wind howled through the trees that night, more violently than before, as if the forest was groaning in protest. I didn't sleep after the symbol on the mirror. Instead, I sat in the corner of my cabin, flashlight clutched in one hand, my father's old hunting rifle in the other. Shadows crept along the walls with every flicker of the fireplace, and though I heard no footsteps, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was pacing just beyond the window. By morning, the symbol was gone. Completely vanished. I didn't wipe it off. I didn't touch the mirror at all. I hadn't imagined it. I knew that much. That rune wasn't just carved, it was etched in something darker than soot, something that pulsed like it had its own life. And now it was gone without a trace. I tried to radio into the central ranger station, but the connection was full of static. The kind that wasn't just from a storm or distance. It was like something was jamming it. All I could hear was a faint clicking noise on the other end. Like tapping. Or teeth. Later that day, I forced myself back into routine. Inspections, trail monitoring, boundary checks. The eastern trail had been blocked by a fallen pine, but that wasn't what concerned me most. It was the trees nearby. They were stripped of bark in spiral patterns, all leading toward the ground where a hollow in the earth had opened up. Inside the hollow were bones. Dozens of them. Animals, mostly, but not all. Something was building a nest. I reported it in my logbook, but a sick instinct in my stomach told me no one would read it. I took photos with my phone, but every image came out blurred, warped, as if the air itself bent around that hollow. I didn't upload them. I didn't want that thing knowing I saw what it made. On the 4th night, I heard it breathing. I was trying to sleep when the sound came through the walls. Not outside, through the walls. Like a deep exhale that traveled through wood and air and space. It was heavy, labored, as if the trees themselves were tired from holding its weight. I stood and moved slowly toward the window, careful not to make a sound. I was afraid to look, but I had to. What I saw rooted me in place. Just past the edge of the clearing, between 2 towering pines, was a figure. Tall. Thin. Too thin. Its limbs looked stretched, like branches pulled taut. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching. Its eyes were the only visible feature, 2 glowing amber coals staring straight at my window. Then, it tilted its head. Not slowly. Not naturally. It jerked, like a puppet on strings. And then it smiled. That was the first time I screamed. Not loudly, not enough to echo through the trees, but a raw, quiet cry of terror that clawed out of me involuntarily. I slammed the curtain shut and fell backward, nearly knocking over the heater. I didn't look out again. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I found claw marks on the cabin's back wall. Deep gouges. 7 of them. I don't know how I didn't hear it. Or maybe I did, and my mind shut it out to survive the night. The ground outside was disturbed, as if something massive had been pacing in circles for hours. The firewood pile had been scattered, shredded star. I knew then that whatever was in the woods wasn't just watching. It was waiting. I thought about leaving. Hell, I packed my bag, stuffed it with food, water, a spare flare. But when I opened the front door, the forest was wrong. The trees had shifted. The trail was gone. Everything outside my cabin looked different. It wasn't just a forest, it was a maze. And I was the rat. That afternoon, I went back to the outpost tower. I thought maybe if I could get above the tree line again, I could see where the roads were, orient myself, figure out a path out. But the tower had changed. I swear to you, it was taller. Not by a few feet. By stories. Where once there were 3 levels, now there were 5. The staircase spiraled higher than it had before, and the wood had darkened, aged like a corpse left in the sun. Moss grew between the steps. Bones were tied with sinew along the railing, like macabre wind chimes. I climbed anyway. Each level creaked louder than the last. When I reached the top, the trapdoor was already open. That's when I smelled it, wet decay, like meat rotting under a wet cloth. I stepped inside, eyes burning from the stench, and saw the walls were covered in carvings. Not just the symbol from the mirror, but many. Some were human runes, others weren't. Then I saw the notebook. It was my father's. His handwriting was still clear, but the words were frantic, scattered, descending into madness. Asterisk, it comes after silence. It drinks the quiet. Don't run. It likes the chase. Asterisk. Asterisk, don't break eye contact. That's when it moves. Asterisk. Asterisk, the outpost isn't real. It's a copy. A lure. Asterisk. Asterisk, the woods. The woods were never alive. They're it. Asterisk. At the very last page, a message in all caps. Asterisk, the tree line is a lie. Don't trust the path. Asterisk. I took the notebook and fled. As I stumbled down the stairs, something growled behind me. Not loud, but low, guttural, almost human. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to know what made it. But I heard footsteps on the stairs, asterisk right behind me star. Heavy. Wet. Dragging. I reached the ground and didn't stop running until I was back inside my cabin. I slammed the door and pushed the old couch against it. That night, I heard it whisper. It spoke my name. Over and over. From the window. From the walls. From under the floorboards. A rasping, guttural voice that sounded like something choking on blood and teeth. Every time I tried to cover my ears, I swore I heard it closer. Like it was crawling toward me. My flashlight flickered. My battery-powered lantern died. And in the darkness, the mirror glowed. Not the reflection. The glass itself. The mirror shimmered like a pool of liquid silver, and in it, I saw something else entirely. Not my cabin, but a different version. Burned. Broken. Covered in ash and roots. In the reflection, I saw myself sitting in a corner, mouth open in a silent scream, and behind that version of me was the creature. Tall. Watching. Smiling. I threw a blanket over the mirror. The whispering stopped. Now, I'm afraid to sleep. The night is getting longer. The forest grows thicker every day, closing in like a fist. I check the time and it's always just before midnight. The moon hasn't risen in 3 nights. The birds are gone. Even the insects are silent. Tomorrow, I'll try to leave again. But something tells me the woods won't let me. Not until it's done watching. Not until it's ready. The morning after the whispers stopped, I did something I never thought I would. I left the cabin. I didn't want to. The instinct to stay inside, to barricade myself in and never leave again, was almost overpowering. But I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get out of the forest, away from whatever was hunting me. From whatever was watching. I packed my gear, checked my rifle, and made sure the spare batteries were charged for the flashlight. I knew that if I was going to leave, I had to move quickly. And I had to move silently. I couldn't risk making any more noise than I had to. As I stepped outside, the chill of the early morning air wrapped around me like a cloak. The forest felt different. Darker, deeper, like it was alive in a way that it shouldn't be. The trees seemed to close in on me as I walked, the path ahead winding into shadows that stretched too far. The sun, once visible through the canopy, now seemed to barely break through the thick foliage, casting everything in an eerie half-light. I followed the trail I had cleared when I first arrived, but it felt wrong. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, as though it were shifting. Every step I took seemed to make the forest around me grow more oppressive, the trees pushing closer, their branches reaching out like fingers trying to pull me back into the heart of the woods. I passed the hollow where I had found the bones, but it was different now. The hole in the earth was gone, replaced by a fresh mound of dirt. No bones. No remnants of any sort. The forest had covered it, swallowed it whole. I pushed on, moving faster now, my footsteps quickening, though I knew I shouldn't be running. It felt like I was being pursued, though when I turned around, nothing was there. But I could hear it. The rustling of leaves behind me. The soft crackle of twigs snapping underfoot. And the air, it was heavier. It carried the scent of wet earth, decay, and something ancient. I should have turned back. But I didn't. And when I reached the edge of the forest, when I finally saw the open sky ahead, a voice whispered through the trees. Asterisk, you're not safe out there. Asterisk. It wasn't the creature. It wasn't the whispers I had heard before. This voice was human. And it was familiar. I turned quickly, my heart hammering in my chest. The forest was silent now, unnervingly so. The birds had stopped chirping. The wind had stilled. But the voice came again, softer this time, like a breath. Asterisk, you're not alone. Asterisk. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I knew that voice. It was my father. I started to run, my legs pushing through the underbrush as fast as they would carry me. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees growing tighter with every step, until the air was thick with it, wet, heavy, choking. I tried to ignore it. I tried to focus on the sky ahead. But it was like I was walking in circles, the trees never moving, the path never changing. And then I saw it. The cabin. It shouldn't have been there. I knew it couldn't be there. The clearing was miles away from where I had started. But there it was, sitting silently in the middle of the forest, the same old cabin I had called home when I first arrived. The same place I had hoped to escape from. The place I had left behind. But it wasn't right. The door was ajar. The windows shattered. The porch sagged with rot, the boards warped and buckling beneath the weight of something unseen. The air around it felt wrong, like it was holding its breath. I stepped toward it slowly, afraid to move too quickly. The door creaked open when I touched it, revealing the interior, now dark and musty with a smell of mildew and decay. It looked abandoned, just like I remembered. But something felt different. There was a new sense of foreboding in the air, a heaviness that weighed on my chest, forcing me to slow down, to stop. That's when I heard it. A soft voice calling my name. Elijah. My heart stopped. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. I turned anyway. The figure stood at the edge of the clearing, tall and thin, its form barely visible against the dark trees. I couldn't make out its face, but I knew that it was the same thing that had been watching me. The same thing that had been stalking me since I arrived. Its limbs were stretched unnaturally long, the fingers gnarled and twisted like tree roots. Asterisk, you shouldn't have come back. Asterisk. The voice was soft, almost mournful, but there was an underlying sense of malice beneath it. It was the same voice that had spoken to me in the cabin, in my dreams. The same voice that had whispered in the dark corners of my mind, urging me to stay. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The creature took a step forward. Its long fingers curled into claws, and I could feel the weight of its gaze pressing down on me. It was so close now that I could hear the sound of its breath, a ragged, wet sound, like something dying. It has always been here, Elijah, it whispered. Asterisk, the woods, the outpost, they're not just for watching. They're for feeding. And you're the next one. Asterisk. I could feel the ground beneath me tremble, the earth shaking as if the forest itself was alive, responding to its words. The trees seemed to bend closer, their twisted branches reaching out toward me. I backed away slowly, terrified, but the creature didn't move. It just stood there, watching, waiting. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and I could feel it in my bones, that cold, suffocating pressure that had been building inside me ever since I stepped foot on this land. It wasn't just a forest. It wasn't just a place. It was alive. And it wanted me. I ran again, this time without looking back. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay there. I couldn't stay with it. With them. The path twisted and turned, leading me deeper into the woods, farther away from the clearing, farther away from the creature. I pushed through the underbrush, ignoring the branches that scraped at my skin, the dirt that clung to my boots. All I could think about was getting out. But the forest wouldn't let me. The trees grew thicker as I ran, their trunks bending and twisting, blocking my way. The branches seemed to move on their own, reaching down to grab at me. And I could hear it. The thing. It was right behind me. I could hear its breath, its footsteps, heavy and deliberate, like it was savoring every moment of my fear. I stumbled and fell, my knees hitting the ground hard. But when I looked up, I saw it again. The cabin. It had followed me. I couldn't escape. Not now. I don't know how long I ran after that. Hours. Days. Time stopped making sense as the forest closed in around me. The trees seemed to bend and sway in ways that no natural forest should. The branches twisted toward me like hands, reaching out, clawing at my clothes and skin as I sprinted through the underbrush, desperate for escape. But every turn led me back to the cabin. Every path twisted into the same clearing, the same place where that thing stood, watching, waiting. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. My chest was tight, suffocating. I could feel the weight of the forest pressing down on me, suffocating me, forcing me to turn back to the cabin. And every time I reached it, it was closer. Every time, the creature was one step nearer, its glowing eyes locking onto mine like a predator closing in on its prey. I couldn't keep running. I couldn't escape. The outpost wasn't just a place. It wasn't just a building in the woods. It was a prison. And I was trapped inside it. Inside this living nightmare. My knees gave out, and I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. I turned and looked at the cabin, my cabin, its rotting walls now standing in stark contrast against the blood-red sky. The air was thick with an unnatural fog, swirling around me, making it harder to breathe, harder to think. And I could feel it, the presence of something dark and ancient, something far older than the trees, far older than the earth itself. It had been here long before the outpost. Long before my family had built it. I stood slowly, my body trembling from exhaustion, but I knew what I had to do. I couldn't keep running. I couldn't outrun it. There was only one way out. I had to confront it. I had to face the thing that had been watching me. The thing that had been hunting me ever since I arrived. I took a deep breath and stepped toward the cabin. The creature was standing just beyond the porch, its long, gnarled fingers curling into fists as it stared at me. Its eyes glowed brighter now, like embers burning in the darkness. And as I approached, I felt a wave of heat wash over me. Its gaze was scorching, like the very air was catching fire. I raised my rifle, pointing it directly at the creature. I could feel my hands shaking, but I didn't lower it. I couldn't. "You should have left," the creature whispered, its voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind. You should have never come back. This place is not for you. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My mouth was dry, and my heart was pounding in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears. But I wasn't going to let it control me anymore. I had to end it. I fired. The shot echoed through the forest, deafening in the stillness. The creature flinched, its body jerking, but it didn't fall. It didn't even stumble. Instead, it straightened, its limbs elongating further, stretching impossibly tall. Its mouth opened wide, wider than should have been possible, revealing rows of jagged, broken teeth. It leaned toward me, its breath foul, a rancid stench that made me gag. "You cannot kill what is already dead," it hissed. You cannot destroy what has always been. I raised the rifle again, but the ground beneath me shifted. The earth seemed to tremble, as if the forest itself was alive, responding to the creature's words. I stumbled back, my legs shaking, as the trees around me began to move. Their trunks twisted, the branches curling like serpents. The sky above darkened, the red moon now a sickly hue, casting an eerie glow over the scene. It was then that I saw them. Figures. Dozens of them. They emerged from the shadows, their bodies thin and elongated, just like the creature. They moved silently, their faces hidden in the shadows of their hoods. Some of them had eyes that glowed like the creature's. Others had no eyes at all. They were faceless, their features obscured by the darkness, but I could feel their presence, cold and suffocating. "You cannot escape," one of them whispered, its voice hollow and empty. The forest is ours. And you, are ours. Asterisk. I backed away slowly, my mind racing for a way out. But there was no way out. The forest had closed in around me. The trees were no longer trees. They were sentient, alive, watching, waiting. The figures in the shadows moved closer, their cold eyes fixed on me. I turned and ran again, my feet stumbling over the uneven ground, the weight of their gaze pressing down on me like a vice. But the more I ran, the closer they got. The more I tried to escape, the more the forest seemed to shift and bend, trapping me in its grasp. I didn't stop until I was back at the clearing, the cabin looming in front of me like a dark sentinel, watching. And standing in front of it was the creature. It was taller now, towering over me, its face twisted into a grotesque smile. It reached out a long, bony hand, and I could feel the cold of its touch even from a distance. The world around me seemed to warp, the trees bending toward it like they were drawn to its power. "It's too late," the creature said, its voice now a low, rumbling growl. Asterisk, you can't escape. You're part of this place now. Asterisk. And then I understood. The outpost wasn't just a building. It was a barrier. A seal, keeping something locked away. Something older than the forest. Something that had been watching for centuries. It didn't just want me. It wanted my family. It had always wanted them. And now that I was here, now that I had stepped into the trap, it had claimed me as its own. I raised my rifle one last time, but it didn't matter. The creature didn't move. It didn't need to. "You're already one of us," it whispered. And I was. I could feel it now. The pull of the forest, the darkness, the power that had been watching, waiting for me to step into its grasp. I couldn't fight it. I didn't want to fight it. And when the trees closed in around me, when the shadows swallowed me whole, I finally understood. I wasn't just being watched. I was becoming part of it.